America is entering a state of economic shock, and the first alarming signals are already here. Across the country, major warehouses are closing one after another. Auto giants like Ford and General Motors are cutting jobs on a scale not seen since the 2008 crisis. Just last week, more than 21,000 jobs in the auto industry disappeared in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Why? Because Donald Trump's reckless tariff war is backfiring on the United States itself, and it is hitting hard. And now he is making the situation even worse. After months of threats, tariffs have officially come into force. Since May, tariffs on Chinese and other goods from BRICS countries have skyrocketed, driving up prices on steel, aluminum, microchips, and other key materials to unprecedented levels. Auto parts alone have risen in price by more than 37%, forcing production lines to idle. Warehouses are filled with goods that are too expensive to ship, or with cargo stuck at customs due to retaliatory measures from China and Brazil. A new report from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce warns that more than 2,000 companies dependent on stable supplies could shut down within the next 90 days if tariffs remain in place. This is a slow but steady collapse of America's key industries: logistics, transport, and manufacturing, and it is already happening. That is why in this video we will break down the numbers, the consequences, and the harsh truth about Trump's tariff disaster. The worst is only beginning. Donald Trump assured Americans that he would save industry. He promised that the auto sector would be one of the biggest winners. His message was simple and clear. Tariffs on foreign cars and auto parts would protect jobs, support domestic production, and give automakers the advantage they desperately needed. It sounded like a call to action in states where factories had been shutting down for decades. People were told tariffs meant more cars assembled in America by American workers. But the numbers of 2025 tell a very different story. This year, the U.S. auto industry has made no real leap forward. On the contrary, many problems have only worsened. The very tariffs that were supposed to protect the industry have brought colossal additional costs. Analysts warn that because of them, the country could lose up to 30% of its entire auto industry. Today, cars are assembled from parts supplied from all over the world. Engines, electronics, sensors, and steel can cross borders several times before a vehicle reaches the assembly line. Duties on these components mean that manufacturers have to pay more just to keep production from halting. According to industry studies, a 25% tariff on cars and auto parts could add more than $100 billion in extra expenses across the sector. These extra costs hit every segment of the business. Ford, General Motors, Stellantis have already reported losses directly linked to tariffs. Toyota cut its profit forecast, warning of a $9.5 billion hit due to trade measures. These losses mean less money for building new plants, modernizing old ones, and keeping jobs. In 2025 alone, Stellantis has already laid off about 900 employees in the United States, and that is just one example. Smaller suppliers, unable to pass rising costs onto customers, are also being forced to cut staff. By some estimates, tens of thousands of jobs may be at risk if the situation does not change. For workers, this is the exact opposite of what they were promised. In towns where the auto plant is the main employer, even a few hundred layoffs deal a heavy blow to the economy. Local shops, cafes, and services lose their customers. Tax revenues shrink, schools and social programs suffer. It is especially painful when cuts hit suppliers. Such news often goes unnoticed in the media, but the damage to local economies is no less. Consumers also feel the hit. Tariffs act like a tax on every imported part, and this tax is built into the price of a car. Experts say tariffs can add thousands of dollars to the cost of certain models, making them less affordable against the backdrop of high auto loan interest rates. More and more people are choosing used cars or postponing purchases. In June 2025, new car sales fell compared to the same month last year, and the main reason is rising prices. Even with a small increase in sales, manufacturers' profits are shrinking because production costs have gone up. Industry leaders are no longer silent. Automakers and the trade association are lobbying the White House, demanding that some tariffs be eased or lifted, warning that if costs keep rising, production will move to countries with lower trade barriers. The exact opposite of what these tariffs were meant to achieve. Some relief measures have already been introduced, such as a small reduction in duties on certain parts, but these are temporary fixes that do not solve the core problem. Constant uncertainty prevents companies from planning long-term investments. Meanwhile, the U.S. auto industry faces other challenges. Electric vehicle production requires expensive factories and battery complexes, but because of tariff pressure, companies are delaying or scaling back these projects. Without such investments, the U.S. risks falling behind in the global race for the electric car market. While foreign competitors assemble cars more cheaply, American buyers pay more and get less choice. The outcome for the first half of 2025 is clear: rising prices, falling sales, layoffs, and frozen investments. Tariffs were supposed to be a lifeline for the auto industry, but have become a heavy burden. Experts warn that without serious policy changes, the second half of the year could bring even more massive layoffs and new plant shutdowns. For workers and towns that believed in these promises, the gap between words and reality grows larger each month. Meanwhile, job cuts in the U.S. auto industry are not stopping. In April, Stellantis announced temporary layoffs. Production at related plants in Canada and Mexico was also halted. Earlier in the year, at the Toledo, Ohio plant where pickups and the Jeep Gladiator were made, another 1,100 people were laid off. These were well-paid jobs in regions whose economies heavily depend on auto plants. General Motors also had to freeze jobs at its technical center in Chicago, affecting engineers, designers, and office staff. Production was paused due to material shortages, and again, tariffs were to blame. In the GM Cruise division for self-driving cars, nearly 1,000 people were laid off. Another more than 1,000 office employees, including around 600 near Detroit, lost their jobs as part of a major cost-cutting effort. In all these cases, the layoffs are directly linked to rising costs companies face this year. The problems did not only affect Detroit automakers. In July, Daimler Truck also announced a cut of 2,000 jobs in the US and Mexico. The company warned that existing tariffs could cost several hundred million euros this year, so the workforce had to be adjusted to slower production. If you add up all these figures, it turns out that in 2025, nearly 8,000 jobs have already been lost in the auto industry alone. And this does not include small suppliers producing seats, electronics, and metal parts. Layoffs are also happening there at full speed, but they are often not reported in the media, even though they also reduce the number of jobs in the same towns. At the same time, the cost of producing new cars has risen sharply. According to industry data, tariffs can add several $1,000s to the price of some models. Against the backdrop of high interest rates, this makes monthly loan payments unaffordable for many buyers. Because of rising costs, automakers have already slowed down or postponed investments in electric vehicle production and battery plant construction in the United States. Without these projects, there will simply be no new jobs to replace those lost. But while the auto industry is going through hard times, Trump has made the situation even worse. Now, tariffs apply worldwide, and their consequences will not take long to appear. After months of threats, the Trump administration officially imposed new duties on Thursday. Their full effect has not yet reached stores. Some goods shipped before the deadline are still arriving under the old tariffs. But once these stocks run out, every new shipment will come with the new markup. That is when ordinary citizens will feel the difference. Economists forecast slower economic growth, rising inflation, and new layoffs. The full scale is still hard to gauge, but the direction is clear. There is also important news from the Federal Reserve. Trump has nominated Dr. Stephen Miron, a key figure in designing the administration's tariff and trade policy, to the vacant seat on the Fed's board. Miron advocates for a rapid cut in interest rates, which will put additional pressure on the Fed in the coming meetings to soften the economic blow from tariffs. The first signs of trouble are already visible in the consumer goods market. Many companies are still holding back price hikes to avoid scaring off customers, but their limits are nearly reached. Nike announced that tariffs will cost it about $1 billion. Adidas projects about $230 million in US losses, and Walmart has warned of upcoming price increases. General Mills calculated that aluminum duties alone will add $20 to $35 million to expenses. Businesses can no longer absorb these costs internally and are ready to pass them on to ordinary buyers. The White House insists that foreign exporters will lower prices to stay in the American market, softening the impact of tariffs. In practice, though, the first to pay are American importers. Sometimes suppliers offer discounts, but with profit margins of 2 to 3%, they can keep prices stable only for a few more months before raising them anyway. Michigan is already feeling the hit. The century-old furniture company Herman Miller is closing a plant and laying off 130 people. Families are paying more for food, school supplies, and everyday purchases. The state is collecting data on the economic damage, but rising prices are already visible. History shows that tariffs always trigger retaliation. During Trump's previous term, tariffs cost companies $51 billion, raised consumer prices, and did not bring factories back to the United States. At the same time, the hardest hit were precisely the regions where he had the most support. If nothing changes in the coming months, we will see rising prices for food, clothing, electronics, furniture, and cars. The number of layoffs will grow, especially in states where remnants of industry still remain. The economy will adapt, but for workers and families, this adaptation will mean paying more while possibly earning less. And this is only the beginning. To keep track of developments, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss the most important updates. See you in the next episode.